addition, to achieve greater consistency with the intent of Proposition 11, and to facilitate the ability of applicants to determine their eligibility for the commission so they know whether it's worth putting in applications, the proposed definition of appointed to federal or state office in Section 60804 should be revised to include appointments by the Board of Equalization and to require the BSA to publish a list of appointed federal and state offices that would be covered by the regulation. We think that would be very helpful. We do now, speaking for the League of Women Voters of California, have some comments about this balance of exactly how much that the breadth of that regulation should be or should not be made more narrow. We feel that the definition of appointed to federal or state office should cover appointments to compensated positions, and we would suggest that that should include salaried and per diem. We're trying to reach a balance between not capturing every possible person who's on a commission who, as you would put it, may well not be beholden to an appointing officer. On the other hand, we do believe that there are other reasons for serving on, for valuing an appointment other than simply compensation, and we want to get at that a best balance between excluding too many people and not excluding enough. And so our best take on it at this point is that it should include some reference to salary and compensation, but we do not want it to be too broad in that way. You asked a couple of questions about that, and I don't have really good answers about that, but I'm certainly willing to entertain an answer. And then speaking for the League, but this is also one of those questions that we just didn't have time to research. It was brought up in a community property state like California. Would there be a danger of in the application where contributions are being listed, and the initiative, of course, says no contributions more than $2,000 per year to political candidates? Is there a danger that someone who jointly made a $2,000 or more contribution would split that number in half and therefore not end up having to report at all? And as I say, I'm sorry that we were not able to research that thoroughly, but we would like to ask you to look into it. Once again, we thank you for the opportunity to raise these points, both on behalf of our entire collaborative group and a couple that are directly for the League of Women Voters, and we definitely appreciate the work you are doing. Thank you.
Thank you. I have a question. It's more kind of a technical question, but you're suggesting that we specify in the regulations that the application materials are public record subject to the California Public Records Act. But that would already be the case. So I'm wondering what your thought is in actually adding this language into the regulation.
I might have to defer to some of our other group members. My feeling is that it's one of those things that is probably best repeated for the benefit of the applicants.
Okay.
So many of these things, and especially in the crafting of the application itself, you want to make it very clear to the applicants what the relevant laws are, what protections they have, what things they might want to consider, and that, I think, is simply the answer.
Okay. Do any of the other panel members
I have
questions?
a question. I thought I understood your position, but then I got kind of confused, so I just want to make sure I do understand it. That what you're saying is that a person would have a disqualifying conflict of interest if the person receives a salary or if the person receives a per diem, but if the person receives no salary or per diem, then the person would be okay? That's
our best compromise at this point. We feel that there definitely are people who don't receive a salary and get rather little monetary compensation, who nevertheless have a significant vested interest in the person who appointed them and in the whole political scheme that might make them less suitable to be on the commission. We are trying to draw a balance between the most narrow reading you could make of the initiative and the real considerations that many of our other groups have brought up.
Okay, but your position then is the mere appointment would not create the conflict of interest. That is to say that a member of the legislature or the governor thought so highly of this individual that the individual gets appointed, it's merely the fact that some money is being exchanged?
In working with our group, that has been the general tendency that we have gone to. We have not felt comfortable with just leaving it as strong as salaried, in that, to insert the word salaried. So the answer needs to be that yes, our answer to you is that, but we also believe this is a very difficult question that you have to deal with.
Okay. On another point that you mentioned, the issue of disclosing contributions. Of course, in the state of California, the disclosure of contributions is kind of a keystone to the Political Reform Act and to a lot of the good government concepts. So I guess I'm a bit puzzled by saying that contributions to organizations, for you think that would not provide us with valuable information, but aren't we saying that essentially where your money goes, that kind of tells us where your heart is?
I think you've heard some examples from others that spoke, and also our letter talks about how broad that can be, and those are contributions to organizations, not the contributions that are covered by the Political Reform Act. And I, just as an aside, for that, I think that perhaps consulting the regulations and the reporting requirements, the actual forms used and so forth, may shed light on how to word things on the application form. But to go back to the organizations and causes, the fact is that I don't think that you would get that much more information from information about contributions than you would get from the mere fact of someone's involvement. We've got such a range of situations, from people who will never give much monetarily, but who can be very involved, and that would show in their applications, to people who are more able to give larger contributions, but for whom that shouldn't be such a determining factor. It's a more casual thing. We had some discussion in our group and felt that if you're really looking at the involvement of someone in those causes, how they describe it, what they consider relevant to bring up as the strength of their involvement, will tell you an awful lot.
Should we include something? This is have you committed more than a certain number of hours to a particular organization? Would that tell us something?
I see where you're going, and that possibly. The other thing that we're balancing is making the act of applying not be a super difficult burden on people. And so to the extent that I open up this application form and I think, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to do so much accounting of my time over these last 10 years that I'm just going to throw it aside. We want to be sure that we avoid that kind of problem. And so I'm hesitant to give you a solid answer there.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Good morning. My name is Derek Cressman. I am Common Cause's Western States Regional Director of State Operations. And I, too, want to start by commending the Bureau for carrying out the series of hearings that you have done before and after the issuance of regulations to hear from the public. In drafting California's Voters First, it was always our goal at Common Cause to create a process that would be open and transparent to the public and responsive to California's changing demographics, and ultimately to restore our public's trust in government. And from everything that we've seen from the BSA efforts so far, we commend you for staying true to that intent of the initiative. You've been very thoughtful in soliciting advice from experts that were balanced with input from the public, and you've been very thorough in pulling together regulations to implement the commission selection process, which is the critical first step in ensuring the success of the California Voters First Act. I want to talk briefly about 4 points, the first 3 of which are just elaborating on some of the points in the working group's letter, and the 4th point being a concern of Common Causes alone. First one is related to point 5 in our joint letter dealing with section 60805. And that's where it proposes the definition of the appreciation for diversity criteria.